This is my NorTrac 25 horsepower diesel skid steer. I was looking on the internet and I saw a gentleman who does Florida life clips, has a series of upgrades he's done to his. So I figured I'd shoot a video of a series of upgrades I've done to mine. The number one most important and most beneficial upgrade that I did to mine is doubling the ground speed. The biggest problem I had with this tractor was that it is slow. It's got a 2-speed hydraulic drive on it. High speed is slow and low speed is even slower yet. And I'll be going into how I went about doing that and looking for some feedback. If you want to get in touch with me about this, do not contact me through YouTube. I do not monitor the comments for YouTube. If you want to leave a comment, that's fine. But if you want to say something that you would like me to respond to, get in touch with me through my website. And there is a link in the description section below. At any rate, I'll go through them real quickly here. The first upgrade I did was to get the thing to run cooler. And once I did this, I even contacted the guy from Florida Life Clips to let him know what I'd done and let him know that it had been successful. And that is to cut a hole in this back panel and put a grill over it so it can suck air in very easily. I didn't remove the side panels like he did, which would allow it to get even more air through it. I didn't feel that it was necessary after I had done this. The next thing I did was the controls. You've got a protective cage around the controls, so if tree limbs or something like that hit it, they don't break the controls off. But originally, all the controls used to stick up through that, so I shortened the levers on it. The next thing is the 2 levers to the right here control the ground speed or movement of the tracks. And they were pretty uncomfortable because they used to be the same as these levers, and it would sort of get your hands sore. So what I've done is I put round knobs on them, and I've moved the levers further apart. So now if you're backing up, you rest your hand against this, and you can pull on the levers one at a time so you can back up in any direction. Number 2, if you were traveling forward for a long period of time, it would get a little bit fatiguing. So I put this bar down here that you hook your fingers over the edge of, put your palm on the 2 travel levers, and you can rock your palm side to side to control the direction of it. And that has made this a whole lot more user-friendly. Next thing is, and this goes back to the guy from Florida Life Clips, I noticed that he's got some tracks that work out probably very well. When I found the manufacturer of the tracks or the supplier of the tracks, they had stated that the ones that he's using are a non-metallic core. I have since then gotten some information that that may or may not be true. If they are a metallic core, that would make them an excellent solution. This track works a little bit better than stock. As you can see, there's less void between the cleats. And hopefully that, well, it has helped out quite a bit. The biggest thing I did to help smooth it out was this thing only came with 3 axles and roller sets along the side. I have added 2 additional axles and 3 rollers to each axle. So we've got a total of 6 rollers per side. The next thing I did was the track slack adjuster right here used to be made out of 14 gauge steel, and that bent early on. So what I did was I cut it off and put a 2-inch receiver tube from a receiver hitch, and that solved that problem. I did have to have special springs wound up because the stock springs that were in the 14 gauge tube would not fit in to the 1/4 inch wall receiver hitch tube. Overall, I like the way the tractor operates right now. It's definitely a more functional tractor. And like I say, the biggest improvement I made was improving the ground speed. If you watch through this video, you'll see how I did it. And I welcome any comments. If you have any questions, please go to my website and contact me through the website, because as I stated earlier, I do not monitor the comments on YouTube. and it may be months before I even realize that somebody has asked me a question if you leave a question in the comments section on this video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add additional rollers to both sides, the way I did this side. Stock, this particular tractor has 3 rollers. This one, and this one. And what I'm going to do is add additional rollers between the other 2. What that does is it puts more contact from roller to tractor so it doesn't clunk when you drive it with the rollers hitting on the backside and the track flexing and making for such a rough ride. In order to add these extra rollers to this side, the first step is going to be to remove this track. And in order to remove the track, we loosen up this bolt, back it all the way out, and slide this adjuster back in, and then we lift the track off. Okay. To slide the track adjuster back, I just hit it with a Computane hammer. This is a good time to check these rollers. These bearings have a tendency to wear out quickly. That was actually in really good shape. Okay, once you get the track off, the next step is going to be to remove the entire roller assembly. The roller assembly is held on by either 13/16 bolts or 21mm, depends on how your brain works. If you've got American sizes, go ahead and use them. If you've got metric, go ahead and use those. There are 4 bolts across the top, and there are 4 corresponding bolts across the bottom. I'm going to remove the bottom bolts first because this thing is extremely heavy, and I don't want my hands under here taking the bottom bolts out when it falls. So I'll take those out first, then I'll take the top bolts out, and it can go ahead and fall on the ground for all I care. The top bolts are a whole lot easier because we can get those with an impact gun. I'm going to take out the 2 center ones first. Then I'm going to loosen the front one. to set this 2x4 under the back. What that'll do is allow me to pry up on it as I take this bolt out and lower it slowly to the ground. We'll see if that works. And it worked quite well. And now we'll do the same thing to the front. As I stated earlier, these things are extremely heavy. Now what we're going to do is scribe a line up 8 millimeters from the bottom edge. If you do get this line off a little bit, just note that when you're getting ready to drill the holes. But this line is going to make it a lot easier to drill the holes later. Okay, then we're going to scribe 118 millimeters forward from the leading edge of this slot and strike a line across it, and 118 millimeters back from the trailing edge of this line, or from that slot. Measure twice, cut once. Right where our cross line is, we're going to make a punch mark just to center the drill bit. Okay, now we're going to drill a 1/4 inch hole in each of the punch marks, keeping in mind that this 1/4 inch hole is ultimately going to be the exact location where the axle shaft goes through. And the axle shafts are going to be 5/8. So when this is ultimately drilled out to 5/8, it will just hit the very edge. If you're spinning your drill bit a little bit too fast, then it will actually push metal out just a little bit. I'd like to cover a few things real quickly here. This hole is not centered between the two rollers. It is offset as far as I feel safe doing it, so that there will be about 1/8 of an inch between this roller and this one, and up here it'll be about 1/8 of an inch between this roller and this one. The reason is I don't want these rollers dead centered, because I don't want all 5 axle shafts hitting a dip in the track at the same time, because Unfortunately, the spacing on the track and the spacing on the rollers is dead on, so that all three of these rollers will clunk along the spacing on the track. And if we bias this one to the back and this one to the front, it'll smooth it out just a little bit. So the next thing is, I made up these plates in advance, and when I bias the plate all the way to the back or all the way to the front, I discovered that the original bolt hole that I had put in it lines up exactly with the stock roller. So on the back one, you are going to drill the hole all the way to the front, because on the rollers that I use, there is a recessed area for the head of the bolt. And if the head of the bolt were to hit this roller or the outside edge of the front roller, so it'll drop actually inside the additional roller you're putting on. So we're going to put a bolt through the hole that is going to have the axle shaft, and then we're going to sight right down through these holes, or think of it as just this hole, and in the center of this hole you should see the scribe line that we scribed in the earlier step. Then on the front one, you'll put the 3 holes to the front, or excuse me, ignore these other 2 holes. That was working out the details on the other side. You'll put the 1 hole toward the front. And then you will sight it so that your scribe line is right through the center of this, and we will then tighten down these plates and then drill holes. As I stated earlier, these 2 outer holes in this row was an error while I worked out the details on the other side. So now that we've got a bolt through the hole that is ultimately going to hold the axle shaft on each of these plates, we're going to drill a hole in the hole that's closest to the bolt. That way any wandering on the drill bit will have a much less effect on the overall outcome. And now we're going to put a bolt in each of the holes that we just drilled. And then we'll tighten these bolts down. Now that I've got 2 bolts in each of the plates, I'm going to go ahead and drill out another hole. And keep in mind, if you do it this way, it will be more precise because you're going to have less tendency of this plate to move on you the more bolts that are in place on it. Now we'll put a bolt in each of these holes. Okay. Now I'm going to put a hole in either this one or this one. We'll go ahead and do the outers first. Okay, and now for the final hole. And now we put bolts in the final holes. A couple of things to mention. Number one, if I do decide to start selling these plates on my website, they will only have holes where the bolts are now. The 3 holes that were drilled in error will not be there. The next thing, they will not be painted because you're going to need to touch-up paint them by the time you're done anyway. And most importantly, if you are trying to contact me, do not attempt to contact me through YouTube. I do not monitor YouTube comments. I simply don't have time. If you feel that you need to get in touch with me in order to get a response, go to my website and email me. If you want to leave a comment on the video, feel free to do so, but just don't leave any comments that are going to require a response, because I may never see the comment. As I said, I just don't have the time to monitor YouTube or chat rooms or anything else. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the bolt from the hole that the 5/8 shaft is ultimately going to go through on both of these plates. What we're going to do is step by step, we're going to drill this hole out to where a 5/8 bolt will go through it. The way we're going to do that is progressively larger drill bits. We drilled the initial hole at 1/4 of an inch, so I'm going to go to a 9/32. Then I'm going to go to a 19/64. Then I'll go to a 5/16. Okay, just like on the other side, we're going to scribe a line 8 millimeters up from the bottom of each of these track mounts. And then we'll set our divider up to 118 millimeters from the end slot. And now we drill our 1/4-inch pilot hole . So now we're going to start the process over again on this side. it gets just a tiny bit more complicated because this plate is in the way, so we've got to remove these plates from the top of this and put them on the bottom of this, and then drill the last two holes here and the last two holes here from the inside with a 90-degree drill and a very short bit. We're going to take a right angle drill bit, a right angle drill, and an 1/8 inch bit, and drill a pilot hole where each of the 1/4 inch holes is going to go on that inner plate. In order to hold the drill bit in the center of the 1/4 inch hole, we're going to use these. What this is a centering guide for easy outs. So you put your 1/8 inch drill bit in that, and this is a 1/4 inch on the outside, and it holds the drill bit dead center of the original hole instead of letting it wander. Now we'll take a very short 1/4 inch drill bit and drill the holes out to the finished size of 1/4 inch. Okay, so now you can see the roller assembly now that we've got it assembled. You'll notice that the gap between the rear new set of rollers and the extreme rear stock is a smaller gap than the next one over. And then this one is a larger gap also, and then the very front one is slightly smaller. The reason for that is if I had centered my new rollers directly between the existing rollers, they all 5 would have hit a lug at exactly the same time, and it would not have helped to smooth out the ride at all. But as you can see, we've added 2 more axles, and each axle has 3 rollers on it. The center roller serves as a guide to help keep the track from coming off in real sharp turns. Okay, the next thing that I'd like to point out, and this is real straightforward and simple, the track adjuster bar was made out of 14 gauge sheet metal, which bent very quickly and easily. I have cut the 14 gauge sheet metal 2x2 off and welded a piece of receiver hitch on both sides. The problem that's going to come in when you do that is that the spring for the track adjuster was slightly too big to fit down into the 2x2 of the receiver hitch. So I had some springs wound up, and you can contact me if you wanted to get a set of springs for yourself. But now the new springs go in the same way the original ones did, and the track adjuster goes into the track guide the same way it used to go in, except for right now it's significantly more robust. And the next item is that these tractors are extremely slow, so I'm going to change the gear ratio. Originally, the drive gear, which would be the gear on the hydraulic motor, is 15 teeth. And I've got 2 different experiments here I'm going to do. One will be a 28 tooth and the other will be a 24 tooth. And let me go ahead and show you that. Okay, so these are a set of 24 teeth sprockets. And what I did was I just took some plate sprockets and bored them out to 3 inches. And these are 28 tooth sprockets that I took the original sprocket and cut the teeth off of them. Put it on the lathe and turned it down to 3 inches. And then I took a 28 tooth plate sprocket, bored that out to a 3-inch diameter, and welded the plate sprocket to the existing hub, because unfortunately I was not able to find any hubs with the exact same dimensions. If you happen to find any, please let me know. At any rate, so I'm going to put these on and see how they work. If I'm not happy with the 28s, if that's just a little too tall a gear ratio, then I'll go to the 24s, which hopefully should work out. Okay, so now we have the sprocket and the chain in place, as you can see through this window here. You'll notice that the master link is hooked in place so that the closed end is the leading end when you're traveling forward. That is so that if the chain gets too much slack and is slapping against the bottom of the housing, that it won't knock the master link off as likely. Another thing I'd like to touch on is this is a 28 tooth sprocket, and if you do the math very carefully, there's technically enough room to get the chain around a 30 tooth sprocket. Good luck with that. My own thoughts are that if the chain has any slack and it's slapping against the bottom housing, it'll eventually beat that clip off the master link, and that will cause you to have a bad day, especially if you're somewhere way away from concrete in a shop and things like that. You don't want to be down in the woods when that chain comes off. So at any rate, now we're going to put the track carrier assembly back on, put the track on, tension the track, and go over to the other side.